As the sun rose on the horizon, Vasca, a tractor driver on a once thriving state farm, was already up and rummaging through his refrigerator with an insatiable hunger for a good meal. His frustration was palpable when he discovered that he and his wife, Angelica, had a mouse sharing their meager provisions. Ever since they had sold their apartment in the barracks of the regional center and moved to the suburban settlement, the refrigerator in their still decent house provided by the state farm could be likened to a refrigeration plant. This was due in part to Angelica's job as a cook in the village school, a small educational institution where she managed quite well on her own, refusing to acknowledge the state's need for an assistant. However, Vasca now suspected that his wife's arguments had run out, and that a cunning worker had been brought into the kitchen. He couldn't make sense of the empty pantry, despite it being stocked with a surplus of goods just a few days prior. Bags full of butter, meat, cheese, cereal, and other items had been transported there without hesitation by the cook. However, the sudden depletion of supplies left Vasia suspicious. His wife joked about an impending inventory check, causing Vasia to curb his appetite and feed their children more, so they wouldn't have to suffer through breadless cutlets and meat. Despite his wife's nonchalant attitude, Vasia knew she was hiding something. He reminisced about how he had sold some of the state-owned diesel fuel he had taken from his employer's vehicle to a passing peddler for cash. With a smile on his face, Vasia went to the cupboard where he had stored his earnings. After counting the crisp bills in his treasured box, he donned his oiled shirt and left the house. Last weekend, when the snow had just fallen, he had driven Angelica to town on a tractor, grateful that there was no village chairman to catch him using government equipment for personal reasons. However, this time, the traffic police stopped them at the village exit, and he had no permit. But a quick-thinking Russian man appeared and said they were headed to clear snow near the police station. In seconds, the tractor was speeding towards town on the snow-covered road. They even managed to shop for clothes for his wife before stopping by the regional traffic police building, but all went smoothly. These were minor obstacles. Soon he would own an Avto vase, cruising the village in comfort and the envy of all, particularly the local women who would be bursting with admiration for such a clever husband who earned enough money to buy a new car. Vasily's expression soured once again as he was haunted by the memory of his empty stomach and his suspicions about Angela's recent behavior. She had been irritable, absent-minded in bed, and inattentive to his touch. Despite being a perceptive man, Vasily tried to put these thoughts out of his mind, but they kept resurfacing. Suddenly, an idea struck him, and he revved up his tractor, spewing a cloud of gray smoke, and headed straight for the school where Angela worked, leaving the farm and its work behind. When he arrived at the school, Vasily parked his tractor out of sight and ran to the kitchen, which was separate from the school building. As he approached, he noticed an old Gazin bakery truck rounding the corner. Quickly, Vasily ducked behind the garbage bins by the ramp where the truck was unloading. He watched as an overweight man in a white coat drove an old tub of a vehicle down the hill, its engine roaring loudly. When the man finally reached the ramp, he got out of the truck with a lecherous smile on his face, clearly revealing the purpose of his visit. With a powerful, hairy fist, he banged on the flimsy door of the school's utility room. As soon as Angela emerged, she wore a loose robe over a thin blouse that left little to the imagination. "Kolka, I've been waiting for you," she exclaimed, a smile on her face. "I've made breakfast and fresh bread for the kids. Unfortunately, the heating in the storeroom is acting up again, and Makarich seems to have disappeared after the holidays. The director will come and fix it, but not today. I don't want to be around the boiling pots with so many people. Heaven forbid they tell Vasia about it. I don't want to lose my husband. I'm a passionate woman, and I can handle two." Angela laughed and kissed her lover while looking around cautiously. Meanwhile, her unhappy husband was seething in his hiding place. He had discovered the reason for the cooling of his relationship with his wife. She loved pleasure but wasn't putting much effort into their intimacy. Vasil wanted to burst out of his hiding spot like a powerful lion and shove his male rival who was boss, but he refrained, realizing that the lovers were merely discussing breakfast. Suddenly, his daughter's scream shattered his thoughts. "Mom!" As the woman tossed and turned, her head darted from side to side on the pillow, betraying her restlessness. Meanwhile, the baker was crushing and squeezing the cook's charms mercilessly, while she tried to persuade him to take crates and sacks of produce to sell to his fellow traders at half the usual price. "What a brilliant idea you've come up with, Kolya," said the baker sarcastically. "My betrothed can go hungry. He's used to eating scraps, but with enough money this summer, we can go to Turkey and tell my Burke that my mother in Siberia needs me." Angela dreamily babbled on while coyly removing her lover's hands from certain parts of her body, but he couldn't resist her. He wanted her right then and there. After some convincing, Nikolay finally agreed to load the food into the car first, but the bread ended up going in the opposite direction. The woman looked longingly at the cold back room and told her lover, "Shall we go or what? But quickly, or I'll freeze." To which the fat man responded, "No way, I don't want to lose my instrument of love. Let's go in the car. There's a free spot, and it's warm like a bath." "Wow, Kalinka, you are such a chivalrous and intelligent gentleman." You showed compassion for the poor woman and made sure she was kept warm. Shortly after, the grassy area began to tremble, but Vasil was prepared. Being a sensible man, he did not want to engage in physical altercations with his competitor and found a different solution to the problem. One that would keep the mosquitoes at bay. With a wicked grin, he approached the truck cabin, where he could hear muffled moans from his wife and grunts from the overweight worker. He unlocked the door, released the handbrake, and the vehicle slowly gained momentum, eventually colliding with a large SUV belonging to the owner of the only private business in the village, parked at the end of the street. The impact was brutal to witness. Vasil emerged from the cabin with his trousers down, nursing a large bump on his forehead, fully aware of the severity of the situation. Both cars were severely damaged, and his mistress had twisted her delicate ankle in the crash. The entire village had assembled to witness the accident, and soon Vasily's tractor arrived on the scene. The tractor driver observed in silence as his partially unclothed wife was being loaded onto the ambulance. She attempted to convey something to him, but it was already too late. 1 month had elapsed since the incident. A gleaming automobile was careening around the bends in the village, and Vasily was at the helm, sporting a contented smile on his face. His world hadn't ended with one woman. He had been terminated from his employment for stealing state property, and his mistresses were unable to account for the food that was strewn on the road from the school canteen. The auditors conducted an inspection and uncovered a massive deficit, which his conniving wife would now have to repay. She had fled to the city to escape public disgrace and secured a position as a janitor. Given her past, she was unable to secure any other employment. Vasya had initiated divorce proceedings and was now driving his vehicle from the dealership to the school to pick up his new love interest, a young teacher, following her lessons. Time was of the essence, and there was no point in wasting it.